Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna everyone, thank you so much for coming this morning. So I thought this morning we could read from the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we could read from canto number 1, chapter number 3, entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations, and today we can read from text number 43. I guess you can't. I'll repeat this verse anyway. I think many of you will be familiar. Some of you can bring it on your phone. 1:3:43. It's a very beautiful verse to recite together, and then we'll have a discussion. So, just to give the context, Srimad Bhagavatam is a series of conversations. So, the Srimad Bhagavatam that we are reading is a conversation between Sutta Goswami and the sages. Sutta Goswami and the sages are having a conversation. Is this too loud or is it okay? It's alright. Okay. Sutta Goswami and the sages are having a conversation. So Vyasadeva, when he wants to compile Srimad Bhagavatam, he compiles that conversation. But Sutta Goswami and the sages, they are recounting the conversation between Sukadeva and Parikshit. And that is the ultimate storyline behind the Bhagavatam, that Parikshit got cursed to die in 7 days, and therefore he has come to hear from Sukadeva Goswami. So the original conversation is Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit, but that is now being recited by Sutta and the sages. And what happens is Bhagavatam is layered conversations. So there are many conversations taking place inside conversations. For example, if you get to the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it has the most layered conversation. Because there you have Sutta and the sages speaking, but they're relating the conversation of Sukadeva and Parikshit. But they're relating the conversation between Narad and Yudhishthira. But Narad Muni is relating the conversation between Hiranyakashipu and his queens. And then they are reciting the conversation between Suyagya and his wife. And they are relating the conversation between two Kulinga birds. So it gets quite complicated sometimes. So like this, many, many conversations which actually ultimately reveal the same truth. So in this conversation, the original conversation, the Bhagavatam begins with the sages of Naimisharanya asking Sutta Goswami a series of questions. And now Sukadeva Goswami is revealing those answers to those questions. And one of the questions they asked is that once Krishna leaves this world, how will people be guided? And this is the answer of Sutta Goswami. So you can repeat after me. Krishna Swadhama Pagate Dharma Gnana Divisaha Kalau Nastadrisham Esha Puranar Kodhuno Ditaha Krishna Swadhama Pagate Dharma Gnana Divisaha Kalau Nastadrisham Esha Puranar Kodhuno Ditaha Krishna Swadhama Pagate Dharma Gnana Divisaha Kalau Nastadrishamesha Puranar Kodhuno Ditaha. Would one person like to recite? Krishna Swadhama Pagate Dharma Gnana Divisaha Nastadrishamesha Puranar Kodhuno Ditaha. Krishna Swadhama Pagate Dharma Gnana Divisaha Krishna Swadhama Pagate Krishna in Krishna's Swadhama own abode Upagate having returned Dharma religion Jnana knowledge Adibi combined together Saha along with Kalo in Kali Yuga Nastadrisham of persons who have lost their sight Eshaha all these Purana Arka the Purana which is brilliant like the sun Adhuna just now Udita has arisen. translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. This Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna has his eternal Dhamma or abode where he eternally enjoys himself with his eternal associates and paraphernalia. And his eternal abode is a manifestation of his internal energy, whereas the material world is a manifestation of his external energy. When he descends on the material world, he displays himself with all paraphernalia in his internal potency, which is called Atma Maya. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he descends by his own potency, Atma Maya. His form, name, fame, paraphernalia, abode, etc. are not therefore creations of matter. He descends to reclaim the fallen souls and to re-establish codes of religion which are directly enacted by him. Except for God, no one can establish the principles of religion. Either he or a suitable person empowered by him can dictate the codes of religion. Real religion means to know God, our relationship with him and our duties in relation with him, and to know ultimately our destination after leaving this material body. The conditioned souls who are entrapped by the material energy hardly know all these principles of life. Most of them are like animals engaged in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. They are mostly engaged in sense enjoyment under the pretension of religiosity, knowledge, or salvation. They are still more blind in the present age of quarrel or Kali Yuga. In Kali Yuga, the population is just a royal addition of the animals. They have nothing to do with spiritual knowledge or godly religious life. They are so blind that they cannot see anything beyond the jurisdiction of the subtle mind, intelligence, or ego. But they are very much proud of their advancement in knowledge, science, and material prosperity. They can risk their lives to become a dog or a hog just after leaving the present body, for they have completely lost sight of the ultimate aim of life. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, appeared before us just a little prior to the beginning of Kali Yuga, and he returned to his eternal home practically at the commencement of Kali Yuga. While he was present, he exhibited everything by his different activities. He spoke the Bhagavad Gita specifically and eradicated all pretentious principles of religiosity. And prior to his departure from the material world, he empowered Sri Vyasadeva through Narada to compile the messages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And thus both the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam are like torch bearers for the blind people of this age. In other words, if men in this age of Kali want to see the real light of life, they must take to these two books only, and their aim of life will be fulfilled. Bhagavad Gita is a preliminary study of the Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the summum bonum of life, Lord Sri Krishna personified. We must therefore accept Srimad Bhagavatam as the direct representation of Lord Krishna. One who can see Srimad Bhagavatam can see also Sri Krishna in person. They are identical. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So Srila Prabhupada is making this very strong point. Krishna tulya bhagavata vibhu sarvashrai prati shloke prati akshare nane arthakai. That Krishna tulya bhagavata, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the book, and Krishna, tulya, are exactly the same. They're non-different. And one who establishes their relationship with Srimad Bhagavatam will perceive it to be as brilliant as the sun, as this verse says. Krishna explains, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Everyone knows that verse because of the Mahabharata TV program. Yada yada. So yes, Krishna comes age after age to establish religious principles. So when Krishna comes, he establishes dharma. But the interesting thing is, this verse is saying, Krishna svadham upagate dharma jnana dibi saha. Krishna comes to the world, Dharma Sanstha, to establish Dharma, but Krishna is Svadham. When Krishna goes back to his own abode, Dharma Jnana Debisa, Dharma also goes. So someone will say, what's the point then? Krishna came to establish Dharma, but the moment that Krishna leaves the world, Dharma goes. So it was like a pointless exercise, someone may say. It's not, because the next two lines explain, Kalo nasta drishamesha puranarko dhunodita. But still Krishna remains in this world. Although Krishna goes and seemingly Dharma goes with Krishna, Krishna remains in this world as Srimad Bhagavatam. And through the Srimad Bhagavatam, one can get light, one can get vision, one can get hope, one can get inspiration, one can get all the answers that they're looking for, if one knows the art of how to connect with Srimad Bhagavatam. So, most people have the wrong idea of how to solve their problems in the world. What they think is that Krishna is the means and solving problems are the end. So therefore they come in front of Krishna and they say, Krishna, I've got this problem, this problem, this problem. Now I'm coming to you, you are the means, and the perfection will be that I get rid of all my problems. Actually, it's the complete other way around. The problems are the means, and absorption in Krishna is the end. People have actually got it completely upside down in this world. They think that Krishna's there to solve their problems, but rather it's the other way around. The problems of life appear so that ultimately we realize I must take shelter of Krishna, and then ultimately we become absorbed in Krishna. And therefore most people, rather than being Krishna conscious, they are problem conscious. You see, trying to solve your problems in this world is a useless exercise, because Krishna has already rubber stamped the world. Mamupetya punarjanma dukhalayam ashashvatam. You can't do it. Imagine, for example, it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside. I have to calculate in Fahrenheit for US. We would say 30 degrees Celsius or whatever. So imagine it's boiling hot outside, and you are in your house where there's air conditioning. So it's crazy to think that now I should open my door and expect that the whole world will change. You can't make the world cool. But what you can do is you can step into the house where there is air conditioning and therefore protect yourself from the heat. Or say, for example, you're in a building and on the ground floor the air conditioning isn't working, but on the 5th floor it is. Then rather than trying to solve the air conditioning problem, which may never happen, rather what you should do is just elevate yourself to higher floors where you can find that respite. And so the real solution in this world is to become absorbed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Sometimes people may think this is impractical. I have problems, I have issues, I have difficulties in my life. I can't just sit around reading books. There are real issues here on the table. But remember, there's no solution in the world. There's only the possibility of having absorption in Krishna. That's what will solve your problems. One of our devotees, he became a brahmachari. He's from an Indian family. So all of you, many of you are Indians. You know, if you decide to make such an outrageous decision, then parents are sometimes not very happy. Sridhar Maharaj used to make a joke. When most people come to Krishna consciousness, the biggest obstacle is mahapap. They've done many bad activities, but for Indians it's ma-bap. It's the mom and dad. So he made that decision to leave home and become a brahmachari. So he was living in the north of England and he had to come to the manor. So he left his home, his parents were crying, he was crying, he was very, very emotional. And he was thinking, how am I doing this? Why am I leaving home to take shelter of Krishna and causing my parents so much pain? Anyway, finally he got into the car And then he left his parents at the door, crying, distraught. And so he started driving in the car, and he was driving towards the motorway to come to Manor, London, where he was going to become a brahmachari. So while he was on the way to getting to the motorway in the car, his mind was spinning like 100 miles per hour. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Should I go? Should I turn back? Should I carry on? Is it really the right thing to do, to leave like this and just take shelter of Krishna? So he was having all these doubts in the car. And then as he got onto the motorway, he did something that he had never done before and that he had never done since. You know what he did? You know, sometimes when you go onto a motorway or a highway, there's these people who are trying to get a ride. They're like, London, they have a sign and they're like, hitchhiker. So he was going onto the motorway, his mind was completely bewildered, like having all these doubts. And then he said, I don't know what I did, I just decided to stop, open the door and tell this hiker to come in. So he stopped on the motorway side, this hitchhiker came in. And so they started driving. And within like 30 seconds, the hitchhiker, he saw on the dashboard of the car, there was a picture of Krishna. So he said, who's this? So then thus Bhagavatam Katha began. The devotee just needs like one little sign and then they're in, So then he began, this is Krishna, the Supreme Person is Krishna. Who's Krishna? Krishna he appeared here 5,000 years ago. He was born in Vrindavan. And then he just started speaking about Krishna. Krishna, 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 Krishna. Devotees don't stop once they start. Put them behind the mic and, get ready. And he said, I just started speaking about Krishna. And before I knew it, all my doubts disappeared, all my emotions just became calm. Before I knew it, I was in London, I was at the temple, and there I was ready to take shelter at Radha Gokulananda's lotus feet. And he said, the lesson I learned is, somehow or other, always remain in transcendental sound vibration. Because you can't solve the problems of this world by coming up with a master plan in your mind. But what you can do is try to become absorbed. And therefore the great devotees, they knew the art of how to connect with Srimad Bhagavatam. You see, this is not just a book. Sometimes we think this is a book. We open it in the morning, we get some knowledge from it that helps us, and then we close the book, and then we go out and live in the world. So that's true, we do that. But actually, eventually what we do is we open the book, we begin reading, and then we just stay here. And then what do? You stay here. Because actually you can get lost in the Bhagavatam if you learn the art of how to actually connect. Because this was actually compiled, here Prabhupada says, by Srila Vyasadeva, who is Krishna himself, and this is Krishna. So to connect with the Bhagavatam means to connect with Krishna. So Srimad Bhagavatam is very, very special. And today I'm just going to share with you how Jiva Goswami establishes that if you want to learn anything in life, the ultimate place that you have to go to is Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'm going to explain to you something that he writes in Tattva Sandarbha. As you know, Jiva Goswami is a great scholar, and what he did is he systemized the philosophy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And what he did is he wrote a book called the Sandarbhas, Sat Sandarbhas. Sandarbha means to weave together, right? Like Jarasandha, that who was put together by Jara. So Sandarbhas means to weave together. So what Jiva Goswami does in the Sandarbhas is he takes all the verses of the scriptures and he weaves them together to give the essence of all philosophy. But the first of the 6 Sandarbhas is called, anyone knows? Tattva, tattva sandarbha. Tattva is a very beautiful word. It means truth. Not a relative truth, but absolute truth. Tattva means that truth which is true in all times, places and circumstances for all people. So the first thing that Jiva Goswami does in Tattva Sandarbha is he says, now I'm going to reveal to you the highest knowledge in the universe, but before you receive the highest knowledge in the universe, you have to know where do you go to get knowledge, how do you get knowledge. In philosophy they call this epistemology. How do you know what you know? And so in Tattva Sandarbha, the very first thing that Jiva Goswami does is he establishes that if you want to know anything, you have to come to Srimad Bhagavatam. And I'll explain to you how he does it. He does it in 6 steps. Okay? First thing is Jiva Goswami says, if you want to learn something, then there are 3 ways to learn. Pratyaksha, Anuman, Shabda. If you want to learn something, one way you can learn it is by pratyaksha, which means perceiving it with your senses. He says the second way you can learn something is through Anuman, by logically inferring something. And the third way he says you can learn something is Shabda, by hearing it from someone else. And what Jiva Goswami basically establishes is that if you try to learn things only by pratyaksha and anuman, you will always have limited and imperfect knowledge. Because the senses are limited. How much can the senses perceive? And the mind is also limited because it uses information which was received from the senses. And so the first step that Jiva Goswami establishes is that if you want to know something, then what is the means of knowing? Shabda. You have to hear from someone else. First point established. The next point that Jiva Goswami establishes is that, but who should you hear from? You have to understand who you should hear from, because if you hear from the wrong person, then you're back to square one, problem. And Jiva Goswami says most people, when they hear from someone, they hear from another human being. But the problem with human beings is that they have 4 defects. The first problem of the human being is that they have imperfect senses. And because human beings have imperfect senses, the next problem is that they're subject to illusion. And because human beings are subject to illusion, the next problem is they make mistakes. And because they make mistakes, then the tendency is to then cheat. So this is what's going on in the world. Imperfect senses, illusioned people making mistakes and then trying to cover it up. And therefore Jiva Goswami says, if you have to hear Shabda, but if you hear from a human, you will be cheated. And therefore he says you have to hear from a source which is Apaurushaya. Apaurushaya means non-human. You have to hear from a spiritual source. So he's building up the argument. First step is that you have to, how do you have to get knowledge? First step? Shabda. Second step is, who do you have to get knowledge from? Spiritual source, Apaurushaya. Now the next thing that Jiva Goswami does is he asks, but there are many spiritual sources in this world. There are many religions, there are many bodies of knowledge. So which of them should you go to? He says you should go to the source of knowledge, the spiritual source of knowledge which has the most detail, which has the most accessibility, which has the most beauty, and which has the most intimate knowledge of God. And therefore the third thing that Jiva Goswami establishes is that out of all the spiritual sources of knowledge in the world, which all can help you, the highest spiritual knowledge is the knowledge of the Vedas. Because the Vedas have a detail and beauty and intimacy of knowledge of God that you won't find in any other theology in the world. So the third thing that Jiva Goswami establishes, that you have to go to the Vedic authority. But then Jiva Goswami says, yes, but in the Vedas there are so many books. There are so many books. There is Shruti, there is Smriti, there is Upanishads, there is Itihas, there's Mahabharata, there's so many Vedangas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, so many books, many books. So which of these books should I investigate? So Jiva Goswami says that in this day and age, the Vedic Shruti is very difficult to understand. Well, he says the first problem is that most of the original Vedas, they are actually lost. They are not accessible anymore. There's over 1,000 branches of the Vedas and most of them are lost. So he says the first problem with the Shruti is that we don't have access to all of them. And he says the second problem is, even if you did have access to all of them, you need to know Sanskrit grammar, and you need to have a very analytical and intelligent, sharp intelligence. Otherwise you will not be able to decode the Sanskrit Shruti. And therefore, he says, amongst all the books of the Vedas, if you are to pick one book which will help you to understand the essence of all the Vedas, then you go to the Puranas. Purana comes from the word Purna. Purna means perfect. And therefore, Puranas are those books in the Vedas which make perfect, which bring one to the perfect conclusion that all the Vedas are ultimately trying to teach you. And therefore it said that the Puranas are actually the fifth Veda, Panchama Veda. And he quotes many Upanishadic verses to establish why the Puranas are ultimately the essence of the Vedas. So the fourth thing he establishes, that you should go to the Puranas. But then the fifth question he asks is that, but there are 18 Puranas. So which Puranas should you read? So the next point he establishes is that amongst the 18 Puranas, they are in three divisions. There are Puranas in Tamas, there are Puranas in Rajas, and there are Puranas in Sattva. And so he explains why these different Puranas are there, why they recommend different types of worship, and who each type of Purana is meant for. And then the fifth thing he establishes is that we should read the Puranas which are in Sattva, because those Puranas lead us to the most pure knowledge, because goodness is purifying, illuminating. And then the sixth and the final thing that he questions is, but that still leaves 6 Puranas in the mode of goodness. So amongst those, which should we read? And then he establishes there that amongst the 6 Puranas in the mode of goodness, the Srimad Bhagavatam is considered the essence. Nimnaganam yatha ganga devanam achyuto yatha Vaishnavanam yatha sambhu purananam idam tatha. He quotes a verse, Nimnaganam yatha Ganga. Of all the rivers in the world, the Ganga is considered foremost. Devanam achyuto yatha. There are many gods, but Achyuta, Krishna, is considered the foremost. Vaishnavanam yatha Shambhu. There are many Vaishnavas, but amongst them Shiva, Shambhu, he is considered the topmost. Purananam midam tatha. And amongst all Puranas, Bhagavatam is considered the highest. Sarve Vedanta Sadam hi Srimad Bhagavatam ishyate tadrasamrita triptasya nanyatra shadrati kvachit. Sarva Vedanta Sadam hi. If you want to understand what is the essence of Vedanta, Srimad Bhagavatam ishyate. Srimad Bhagavatam contains that. So like this, he establishes finally that of all the books, Srimad Bhagavatam is the ultimate source of knowledge. So it's very systematic, very beautiful, isn't it? This is Tattva Sandarbha. This is how you can establish why, if you want to learn anything, then ultimately you go to Bhagavatam. Step 1, many ways of getting knowledge, but Shabda is ultimately required. Step number 2, who should you hear from? You should hear from a non-material authority, a spiritual authority. Step number 3, but there are many spiritual authorities. Yes, the Vedas are the highest revelation. Okay, step number 4, there are many books in the Vedas. Yes, read the Puranas because they make everything perfect. Yes, step number 5, there are many Puranas, 18. Yes, read the 6 in the mode of goodness because the others are in the mode of ignorance and passion. Okay, step number 6, amongst those Sattvic Puranas, Bhagavatam is considered foremost. And like this, he narrows it down and explains that Srimad Bhagavatam is therefore the most important literature for the Vaishnavas, and not just for the Vaishnavas, for the whole universe. And so therefore, if you see Srila Prabhupada's life, he was making Bhagavatam available. That was his greatest project. Translating Bhagavatam was Srila Prabhupada's greatest project because he did it from the very beginning of his mission to the very final days. He did it every single day in the early morning, in the most valuable and peaceful time of the day. And Srila Prabhupada, he only went to America once he had started to publish some of his Bhagavatam. So you can see that the Srimad Bhagavatam is a great gift. So amongst all our other projects in life and responsibilities, we have to realize that the greatest project is to connect with the beautiful narrations of the Supreme Lord in Bhagavatam, because that is what will ultimately bring one to a level of Krishna consciousness and deep peacefulness and contentment and fulfillment in life. Because yes, this is as brilliant as the sun. And if you try to remove the darkness of life, which is constantly overcoming us, if you try to remove that darkness in any other way, it will simply be artificial. The only way you can remove that darkness is through the light of Srimad Bhagavatam. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so let me stop here. I'm not sure how long we go on for. I don't know, it's 8:25. Do we have time for questions? Or?
We do. We take as much time as we want.
Okay, sure. Okay, you asked for it. Okay, yes. Questions?
Hare Krishna. The Puranas you mentioned in the mode of Rajagun and Tamagun, what exactly makes them in Rajagun?
Okay, so there are Puranas in other gunas. What is it that it exactly makes them in those modes? So the Vedic revelation is the highest theology because it's what we call multi-level spirituality. What it does is it doesn't tell people do this or go to hell. It says if you want this, then do this type of worship. If you want this, then do this type of worship. In other words, it accommodates all the different levels of consciousness and all the different desires that different living entities may have. So some living entities have desires which are in the mode of ignorance. Some living entities have desires which are in the mode of passion. So what the Tamasic and Rajasic Puranas do is they offer a type of worship, they offer a type of benefit that those who are in ignorance and passion will value. But what they allow them to do is pursue their ignorant and passionate desires in such a way that ultimately they will become purified and elevated of them. And therefore sometimes people say, but I read this Purana and it tells me to worship this God. Therefore that God is supreme. Because in this Purana it says, worship this God. Therefore you all say worship Krishna because you're reading the Krishna Puranas. But what about if I read this Purana, it says to worship here. That's why Jiva Goswami's analysis is so important, because what it helps us to do is say, yes, there are many types of worship, but those worship are not all the same, because there is an evolution of thought here. And so this is even the way that you can respond and discuss with other people who are in the Sanatan tradition, who try to establish the worship of other gods as something which is prescribed in scripture. And we agree, yes, it is prescribed in scripture, but it's not considered the most evolved type of worship like that. Does that make sense? Okay. Good. Yes.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. The class was brilliant. I had heard a few lectures from Bhakti Retreat when you were there in Switzerland, Maharaj. Very attractive.
Thank you.
I got, by the time I'm just following you up, how you there are every lecture I keep listening. Very, very brilliant classes. I had a question of Shabda, when you said Shabda. A person like a layman, you are actually bringing up the highest, which is the Bhagavad Purana. But the person who has to understand the Tattva has to come to Sattva first to understand the Tattva. But a layman, he doesn't know what Sattva is. So how does he come to even Sattva to understand that? Is that just the Shabda can make you come to Sattva? Was my question.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Guru, for your kind words. So your point is that here we're saying that if one has to come to knowledge, then one has to hear Shabda. But what is the point of hearing Shabda if one is not in Sattva, because they will not be able to appreciate that knowledge? So therefore, Shabda doesn't necessarily mean that that authority gives you the highest knowledge. But what it is that in your life you're accepting a higher authority that will help you to move forward on that path. Therefore, devotees are very expert. They know how much knowledge to give to each person at their stage of evolution. When we came to Krishna consciousness, generally the first thing that the devotee said to you was not, Sarva dharman parityaja, give it all up, just, turn away from the world and just, it's all maya, it's all illusion, and nothing's going to make you happy. And maybe you did meet someone like that, but generally we are a bit more sensitive. Generally you met a devotee who said to you, it's okay, you don't need to change your life, just chant one round. Yeah, right. Yeah, right, I don't need to change my life, But generally what they do is, by accepting that Shabda, what you do is you accept an authority, but that authority expertly takes you on the journey. And so, an expert devotee who becomes the medium of Shabda for a conditioned soul, they will know that sometimes what I just need to do is bring this person to a higher morality, bring this person to Sattva, and then I'll give them more. Therefore, sometimes we just give prasadam, or sometimes we teach people, yes, how to overcome stress, or yes, how to become more balanced in your life. But we ultimately have a journey that we know we have to take them on, but it's good to get them here at this point. So like this, accepting Shabda just means accepting someone who can take you on that journey of knowledge. And what that Shabda and how that Shabda comes may vary in different devotees' lives, according to what is required. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the lecture. You mentioned that we are chasing problem solving in this world, and
yes. So many problems come day to day, and here I am saying that there is no solution, the only solution is absorption, but then we have to problem solve. So is it that when you get a headache, there's no solution, throw out all the painkillers, just read Bhagavatam? Is that what I'm saying? No, the point is that we're living in the world, we have to try to make the situation as peaceful as possible. But in the back of our minds, we know it's never going to be peaceful. Prabhupada was once going to a morning walk, they got stuck in a traffic jam, and outside the window there was a sign and it said, roadworks, temporary inconvenience, permanent solutions. And Prabhupada started laughing and he slapped his thigh and he said, the material world means temporary improvements, permanent inconvenience. So it's like when you go to a hospital, here I'll give you an example. You have a choice of going to 2 hospitals. Hospital A, only nurses, no doctors. Hospital B, only doctors, no nurses. Which one do you want to go to? To the doctor. Okay, go with the doctor. Hang out with the doctor friends. See, if you only go to the hospital which has nurses, then day to day you might survive, but you're never going to get out of the hospital. And if you go to the hospital where there's only doctors, with all due respect to doctors, sometimes they don't show up, until like 1 or 2 weeks, So before the doctor shows up, you might already be gone. Right? So you need the nurses to help on a day-to-day basis, and then you need the doctor to get you out. So life is like that. You need to make solutions on a day-to-day basis, right? Your kids, your family, your work. But you need to understand, none of this is gonna solve. I need to get out of here. I need to take my consciousness to that 3rd floor. I need to get absorbed in Bhagavatam. And if you wait till the end of your life, till things free up, when all my responsibilities are done and life gets more, it just never happens. It just never happens, because the material world is expert at keeping you preoccupied from the real business of life. And so everyone, it doesn't matter who we are, there needs to be some time every single day when we disconnect from this world and we connect with Krishna. There has to be some time in the day when we remember, I'm not part of all of this, I'm part of something else. And we need that daily disconnection. Otherwise, when I was in India, I met one yogi and he said, I'll give you a tip. Every year, disconnect for 1 month. Every month, disconnect for 1 day, and every day disconnect for 1 hour. And then he looked at me and he said, disconnect to connect. I looked at him, I said, you should be on TEDx, That was good. Disconnect to connect. There has to be some time when you disconnect from this world, when you remember, I'm a spirit soul, an eternal servant of Krishna. And all these roles, all these identities, all these upadhis, all the world's a stage, and every person an actor, and each person has their entrances and exits. So where's that time? That's the time we spend with Bhagavatam, to enter into the eternal world. So it sounds very nice when we hear it in a Bhagavatam class, and then you go home and you're in, Kurukshetra again, the battlefield. I'm sure everyone's fighting their battles. And how do you disconnect? That you have to learn that art. I remember one temple president, he was incredible, because I was with him and he'd be in the most intense management meetings, and I was sitting with him in the meetings, and ISKCON management can get pretty intense, So I remember being with him in this one day I was with him in this intense management meeting, and I mean it got really intense, like really like passionate. Everyone, the meeting ended, everyone was kind of bewildered, and it was one of those meetings, no resolution. And then he had to give class, like straight off. But it was amazing because he just came out of this management meeting and then he just came down, he sat on the Vyasasana and he just gave the most incredible transcendental class. And I was like, how did he just shift? I was in that class thinking about everything that was going on in the meeting. And he managed to just sit down, switch off, and say it's all an illusion anyway. Ultimately, let us now enter into Krishna's world. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. To have that ability to just switch off. That's the ability one has to develop. So if you know the art of how to put your hand in a bead bag, chant Krishna's names, then you have a whole other world to live in that's separate from this world. If you know the art of how to open the Bhagavatam and actually be absorbed, then you have a whole other world to live in. Otherwise, there's no escaping this world. It's going to haunt you everywhere you go. So, like sometimes when you have an appliance, a device, and it doesn't work, like you're trying everything, sometimes all you have to do is just unplug it. Just wait a few moments and then just put it in, and all of a sudden it starts working. So that's what we have to do in our life. Don't try and just solve all the problems here, just sometimes unplug. Put a sign on your door, do not disturb, already disturbed. Therefore, I am shutting the door, and now I'm going to be with Krishna. Please give me this time. Tell your children, tell your husband, tell everyone, please don't disturb me. Because if I spend this time with Krishna, I can serve you better. So create some sacred space. It's the biggest problem in the world that people don't have sacred space anymore. No time no space to digest life. According to Ayurveda, half your stomach should be filled with solid, 1/4 should be filled with water, and 1/4 should be filled with sweets. No, 1/4 should be filled with air. Otherwise, where's the space? No space for digestion. So our lives now, we have no space. Day to day, moment to moment, hour to hour, dealing with the demands, solving the problems, and then life passes us by. And still, no love for Krishna. That's what's going to count at the end of the day. Anyway, there you go. There's my little pep talk for today. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. It was a really nice class talking about the importance of absorbing ourselves in Srimad Bhagavatam, and also describing Jiva Goswami's epistemology that Dr. Siddhartha, and that was really awesome. In terms of absorbing ourselves in Srimad Bhagavatam, I personally find that just opening up the book and trying to read it, just like Ramadan, just like how I read a novel, is tedious and leaving. Like I may feel inspired by a few points, but it feels like the amount of knowledge that's there and what I take away, there's like a really like small ratio, maybe like 5%. I was wondering, like, do you have any tactics, advice on how to improve our effectiveness in contacting the Srimad Bhagavatam? How to actually improve more from the time spent with it?
Spiritual life hack. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Antya Leela of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he tells one Bengali poet, Jaha Bhagavata Pada Vaishnave Rastane Ekanta Ashraya Kore Chaitanya Charane. He says, if you really want to learn Bhagavatam, then you have to go and sit at the feet of someone who has or is relishing Bhagavatam. Actually, if you look at the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, when Rupa Goswami talks about hearing Bhagavatam, he actually says one should read and hear Bhagavatam in the association of someone who is tasting the rasa of Bhagavatam. And therefore you see, I started this class by talking about how the Bhagavatam is full of conversations. Because the Bhagavatam is something which is churned. This Bhagavatam is something which is exchanged. The Bhagavatam is something which is learned with rasikas, those who are tasting. Muhoraho rasika bhuvi bhavuka. And so actually you're completely right. There are two Bhagavatas, the Grantha Bhagavata, the book Bhagavata, and the Vyakti Bhagavata, which means the person Bhagavata. And actually, Dui Bhagavata is explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita that these are two which are working in tandem. And therefore, if one really wants to taste Bhagavatam, actually one must hear, one must learn, and one must study under someone who's actually tasting. You see, when you sit in front of someone who's actually, like for example Srila Prabhupada, who's actually tasting Bhagavatam, then when they speak Bhagavatam, they're not just giving you the information of Bhagavatam, but what they're also transmitting to you is their conviction, their taste, their enthusiasm, their own love. And therefore when one hears from a Bhagavata, which means a devotee who is relishing, then actually it has a different effect on the consciousness. And so one should search out who are those individuals who are actually sincerely tasting Bhagavatam and try to hear. That hearing is very powerful. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, once one military man had come to him. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was trying to explain to him the power of hearing Bhagavatam. So he was thinking, how do I explain to the military man? So he gave an example. He said, just like you try to go to attack the opposite, he said to the military man, just as you send an army to attack a region, then what they do is this army comes in a helicopter and they launch the helicopter, and then the helicopter comes over the opponent's territory, and then gradually the helicopter comes down, and then the helicopter lands, and then the doors open, and as the doors of the helicopter open, then all the soldiers come out, and what the soldiers do is they run in all directions with their weapons and they seize the whole territory. So he said, in the same way, you have to sit in front of a sadhu, and when that sadhu launches the vibration of Bhagavatam from their mouth, boom, then what happens is that vibration, if you allow it to descend in your heart, and if that vibration lands in your heart, then what will happen is, as it lands in your heart, every single syllable that is launched from the mouth of a sadhu will go in all directions, and it will conquer your entire being. It's dangerous stuff. So he said that is the power of hearing. Therefore people heard Srila Prabhupada, they were touched. Even sometimes when they didn't understand Prabhupada, it was still powerful. Because there's something about hearing from someone who is tasting, it has a different impact. Okay, maybe last, I don't want to hold everyone too long. But, yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Maybe I'll just say it for everyone so they know the context. So yesterday I was doing the youth program and I said you have two options. Option number one, you can fulfill all your desires, you can do everything you want to do in this world, you can achieve everything you want to achieve, and at the end you'll definitely go back to Godhead. Do you want to hear option two? You don't need to hear option two, right? So that's option one. Option two, let's go now. Now. You can go back to Godhead now. Want to come? Now. Who would choose option one and who would choose option two? Remember, in option one, you're going back to Godhead also. So I was making this point to them. I don't think many of us would go for option two. We'd be like, Krishna, let's do it in the mode of goodness. Let's be balanced here. Let's do it like nice. I need some planning. I need some like prior notice, you know. I can't just leave it now, you know. I mean, come on, like we've got to tie up a few loose ends here, and then I'm coming. I'm on my way. Just now coming. So that may reveal to something to us. Yes, we may say responsibilities, but what's the ultimate responsibility? To do what Krishna wants. If Krishna wants you to go now, then that's the biggest responsibility. So even if we say, no, I have to stay here because people are relying on me. But Krishna can take care of everything. So why are you worrying? You think it all rests on you? Oh no, but they, you know, no. So that means that still within us, we have some agenda here in this world. And that's what's stopping us. Anyway, so I was just, yes, tell us.
Yes, Maharaj, so like yesterday, most of them chose option one. On the other hand, I was thinking, why not choose option two? Because first option, I have to be here, you know, in Dukhala Mashashtam anyways.
Yeah.
So it's like a prisoner coming to me and saying that suffer, and at the end you'll go home back to Korea. And whereas
Yeah.
you have to, you know, leave this material world and go now. So why not choose option two?
Yeah, it's crazy. Why don't we choose option two? Because we haven't fully registered that it's Dukhalayam Shashvatam. Even though we know it, we don't know it. Therefore we kind of look at it and, you know, Dukhalayam Shashvatam, and then we're looking out thinking, not so bad. Okay, it's nice also. Right? I mean, they're nice, it's nice philosophy, but it's okay, it's not, you know. So we say many things. How much have we realized? Like we talk about things like as though we've realized it, but we, you know, like devotees just talk about death, you know, like, yeah, we're gonna die, you know, it's just like they talk about it as though, it's funny actually, and you know, for someone who's not like a devotee in that sense, they actually get, they can't, it's strange for them how much we talk about death. Like once I was giving a class in the manor, it was a nice sunny summer Sunday afternoon, and you know, I was a young, you know, and I said, and we're gonna die, and everyone's gonna die, and it's all death, and it's all, you know, like, you know, and you know, like for me, it was just like, we talk about this all the time. It's just like, yeah, this is what our books say all the time, you know. And then this person came up to me after, he said, you know, I just came here for a nice, relaxing Sunday, you know, happy, joyful time with the family. We came to get some prasadam, and you know, just, and here you were talking about death. And then for the first time it occurred to me in my mind, we talk about these things so openly. But have I realized any of this stuff? I mean, samsara dava, nalalita loka, this world is on fire. But I don't know, like, are we perceiving it like that? You know, like we, sharira vidyajal jadendriya. It's like very joyful. What does it all mean? This body is a lump of ignorance, and the senses are a network which are leading to death. Sharira, very joyful, you know. I don't know how much we're perceiving all of this deeply. So yeah, why would you stay here? Why would you stay here if Krishna's like, I'll take you out now, come. It makes no sense to stay here, but we want to stay here. That's what Yudhishthira said is the most amazing thing. Ahani ahani bhutani gachanti ha yamalayam sheshastavaramicchanti kimascharyam ataparam. Every single day living entities are leaving this world. But my desire and my belief is that I will stay here forever. Kimascharyam ataparam. What can be more amazing than this? Why would you want to stay here? But we do. Therefore, it hasn't quite registered. Hare Krishna. Yes.
And Purana was divided into 3 divisions.
Yeah, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas.
What is 3 divisions? What is that essence of Tamaguna, and essence of Rajaguna?
Oh, just like the Bhagavatam is the essence of the Sattvika Puranas, what is the essence of the Rajasic and Tamasic? Wow, good question. I have no idea. I don't know if there is, if you can find the essence of ignorance or the essence of passion. See, because what the Sattvika Puranas are doing is they're ultimately bringing one to Vishuddha Sattva. So actually, in one sense, Bhagavatam is not a Sattvik Purana. Bhagavatam is Vishuddha Sattva. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam. So actually, although we say Bhagavatam is a Sattvik Purana, it's not. It's completely beyond the modes of nature. Dharma projitake tavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. Because it throws away all material religiosity. And Sattva is still material. And so, Jiva Goswami is establishing actually that this is therefore Amala Puran. It's the spotless. It's completely out of the modes. Like that.
With Prabhupada, I have read long time ago, Prabhupada explained about it, that by scrutinizing the Bible of the scriptures, it is found that Narayana is the supreme absolute truth.
Radharani?
Narayan is the supreme absolute truth. He allows to be worshipped. And how he should be worshipped in the age of Kali? By chanting the holy name of God.
Yes.
It says the name is already Sarvasasthan, Vichara Chituna Punaha, Idam Ekam Sunishmanya, Deyo Narayana Chitra. So in this age of Kali, by simply chanting Hare Krishna mantra, everything will be done. So
Hare Krishna. Yes, yes. Yes, therefore is mentioned. Iti shodashakam nam nam kalikalmashanashanam nata parataropaya sarva vedeshu drishyate. If you sarva vedeshu drishyate, drishya means to explore, to see, to examine. Sarva vedeshu drishyate, if you examine all the scriptures, sarva vedeshu, nata parataropaya, you will not, na ata param, you will not find anything higher than what? Iti sodashakam nam nam, these 16 names. Because these 16 names, kali kalmasha, nashanam, it destroys all the effects of Kali Yuga. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Oh, I see many hands. I don't know what to do. Okay. Should I take it? Yeah.
This is from Srivadapadu. What's your advice for people that prefer to stay in the mode of goodness and never go beyond to the transcendence and the true purpose of life? How can we motivate such people?
So some people prefer to stay in the mode of goodness. See, it's like this. Imagine you go to the airport, then in one sense you're closer to the destination because from the airport you can get the plane. But if at the airport you get so sidetracked in buying the duty free that you miss your plane, then it's crazy. It's crazy. So that's basically what people do, is they come, they live in sattva, which is nice. It's nice, of course. Buying the duty free is great. It brings some enjoyment. But the real thing is you came to the airport to get out, to go to the place. So, yes, Prabhupada says even the mode of goodness is binding. Because you meet people, isn't it? Like, I don't know how, like Chicago is probably like that, but you go many places in the world, Australia, Hawaii, New Zealand, they are like heavenly planets. Yeah, Prabhupada said they're like heavenly. So people are nice, they're like, we're saying like Dukalayam, Ashashvatam, and they're looking around like there's palm trees, pineapples, good weather, great work-life balance, very little disease, no political problems, It's a good life. Comfort is also dangerous. Therefore, comfort can also destroy your spiritual life. Yeah. Therefore, we have to accept some discomfort to keep moving. So yeah, sattva is also binding. Krishna says that. Sattva binds you to a sense of happiness. My life is good. I don't need. So, yeah, Prabhupada said it's like jails, cells, which have different bars. So ignorance is like a solitary confinement. Rajas is like a jail cell, which has some facility, and then goodness is like a jail cell, where all the bars are inlaid with gems and gold. Oh, very nice cell. But still bound, still entrapped, still limited, and still subject to Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi. And therefore Krishna says, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukha Doshanu Darshanam. See, when we say darshan, we think, I'll come and see Krishna, darshan. It's very nice. But Krishna says, every day you should have another type of darshan. No, I had darshan today, I saw Krishna. Yeah, very good. There's another type of darshan. Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi. Therefore you should see every day, this world is a disaster zone. When I joined the temple, whenever there was a funeral program, I was like, I'm going, I want to go. So everyone was always asking me, why are you so enthusiastic when someone passes away that you should go to the program? I used to go to every single funeral program, every single crematorium, because I felt for me it was very good. Because in that moment you remember, this is it, it's all coming, it's all happening. Unfortunately, when you leave the crematorium, you forget about everything. They call this smasan vairagya. Everyone in the crematorium is a philosopher. Everyone is a philosopher in the crematorium. But the moment they leave, then they forget all the philosophy. So we must constantly see that it's urgent, it's not a nice place. But more than that, as devotees, what we're trying to do is get attracted to the spiritual world. Prabhupada said you should read about the spiritual world and you should become captivated. So captivated that you think, in this life, I must get Krishna. So that's what's impelling us to not stay in the mode of goodness. All right. Okay, maybe last one then. I think Mataji has last. So why were the Vedas written in such complex language that nobody could understand? Or you see, knowledge requires one to have qualification. Sometimes they say knowledge in the hands of someone who's not qualified can become more dangerous, isn't it? They say a little knowledge is sometimes more dangerous than no knowledge. So therefore knowledge has to be accompanied by humility. Krishna says this, Vidya Vinaya Shampanne, the great humble sages by virtue of true knowledge. Knowledge has to be accompanied by service attitude. Knowledge has to be accompanied by faith. Knowledge has to be accompanied by non-enviousness. So in other words, what the Vedic system was not to hide the knowledge, but to encourage people to go through a certain process by which they would develop qualities so that when they access that knowledge, they could actually utilize it in the right way. That's one aspect. Another aspect why the knowledge is complicated is because it's a complicated subject matter. It's just complicated, it is. Like no matter how, like you may say like, why do they make the PhD degree so complicated? Why can't they just make it easy so any of us can understand? But that's the whole point. It's a complicated subject, so it must be complicated. And the third reason why the Vedic knowledge is sometimes not so accessible like this is because it's also deliberately done, because Vedic knowledge is not meant to be knowledge that you just study and learn yourself, but that you have to acquire from a teacher. Because there's a certain character development that happens when you learn knowledge from a teacher rather than just trying to grasp it yourself. And so for these reasons, the Vedas are structured in these ways. Is that okay? Alright, thank you so much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.